I'm just going to start talking. I am really reluctant to make this video because I usually try to avoid really super personal information about myself. I'll talk about stuff that I see that triggers me, or I'll talk about something every once in a while, something that's really good that I see, and talk about that and how it affects people and my impression of what I'm seeing out there about avoidance. Although I did make those videos about my sort of disastrous attempt at DBT therapy, which didn't work out for me. Doesn't mean it won't work out for anybody, but it didn't work out for me, and I still kept those videos up. So maybe this is something like that. I don't know. I mean, alright. I'm just going to get into it. There comes a point for every avoidant person where the need to be with another person supersedes the avoidance. Because that is what AvPD is. It's extreme low self-esteem and feeling of unworthiness, of being who you are in yourself and humanity, and need to know that anybody that you interact with likes you, and an absolute terror of being judged, and also a desire to be with people even if you can't be with people. And it every once in a while, the stress of it sort of builds up, and you have to be with somebody. You have to be with people. You can't be by yourself. You know, if you could be by yourself completely and never be with somebody, then you're probably schizoid. It gets to everybody. They want to be with somebody. And it appears like, if you recite in the book, that I'm going into one of those phases. And it's awful, and it's terrifying. I personally have a 5-year cycle. Every 5 years, almost like clockwork, I end up in a relationship. I skipped the last one because the one previous to that, 10 years ago, was so horrible. I got myself in a relationship with an undiagnosed, untreated borderline. And it really was a bad situation because they check all the boxes for avoidant people. And I know it seems like I bash them, and maybe this is why you're going to all assume this is why I bash borderline people. I don't. It's not my personal experience that makes me go, ooh, borderline people. First of all, even my therapists have all been like, ooh, borderline people. Even my DBT therapist, and DBT is designed for borderline people, have been like, ooh, borderline people are tough. See, borderline people, they need so much attention, and so, beyond 100%, they need it all. They need more than any human being on the planet can give them reassurance constantly. And so that works for an avoidant person, because they absolutely make no doubt about it that they want to be with you. You don't have to question it at all. So there you go. And I don't know any avoidant person, seriously, who has not fallen into the trap of being with a borderline person. And then you can talk about whether or not it's abuse if they, you know, depending on how much control they have over their behavior, it's abuse. It is. When they get really bad, it's abuse. No question about it. I mean, if you've got somebody who is trying to manipulate you into doing something that you don't want to do, and how they do that is by threatening suicide. If you don't do what they tell you to do, that's abuse, period. That's abuse. I don't care who or why they do that, you know, and maybe at that moment they actually are feeling that way. But, you know, suicide in order to manipulate as opposed to suicide out of depression, there's a big, huge, massive, giant difference. So, and like I said, I mean, I don't know of any avoidant person who has not had a borderline person glom onto them. But it makes me really leery to be with anybody because I know I'm vulnerable to that. Extremely vulnerable to being treated like that. And I don't ever want to be treated like that again. And, you know, it's a lot easier to just say, okay, fine, well then I'm just, you know, I'm no good for anybody anyway, and I'm just not going to subject myself to that type of treatment, so it's just never going to happen again. And to tell the truth, I was kind of hoping that this would be out of my system, that the next 5 years would come along and nothing would happen, and I would miss it, and that would be nice to be able to miss that urge instead of having that urge. Because additionally, you know, I mean, everybody who's avoidant, they feel they have terrible self-esteem. They feel like they're unworthy, can't stand being judged. They have to know that somebody likes them before they get involved. All those things. Those are the standards. I have another nasty, nifty, however you want to put it, little quirk based on how I was brought up and stuff that I learned that led me to become avoidant, is that I feel strongly like I ruin people. I have this massive sense of responsibility for people that I don't even know. If I see a pattern of behavior and I don't speak up about it, I feel like, okay, if it comes to fruition the way that I would expect it to, and I never said anything to jump in to stop it, then it's my fault that that happens that way. Even though I can't talk to people because I'm avoidant. It's still my responsibility. And so I feel that strongly responsible for anybody who gets involved in me at all. Involved in my life, involved anything. I feel responsible for my therapists if I bum them out. I feel responsible for everything. And I know how things end with me. They don't end well. Let's put it that way. You know, there's basically two ways things end. Either I freak out because I can't handle it anymore being with these people, or I bore them, or I just make them miserable and they have to go. They have to leave me. We're talking 100%. That's what happens. People leave. Or I make them leave because I can't stand being with them anymore. And so since I know this, I mean, I just have this can't shake it feeling like being involved with me always is going to end up with a negative sum at the end. Like, okay, maybe they might get a few little positives from me, but the negatives will definitely counteract and win. There are way more negatives than there are positives to having anything at all to do with me. So I feel like it's my responsibility as a good human being to not get involved with people. So it's not even just the fear that I'm going to be rejected. It's to be a decent person, I can't be involved with people. So when this cycle comes around, which it always does, it's another thing that's almost all avoidant people have these cycles. I talked to somebody who said it was like a clock, that it would go around and, you know, that it would always come back around again. Always. There's nothing you can do about it. Always comes back around again eventually. So I wish this wasn't happening, because it can't happen. I'll either suck it up and stay by myself and be so much more lonely than normal, and so much more like self-loathing, and because there are horrible people out there. I mean, horrible people. Some of the ones I've quoted in previous videos are horrible people. They're just awful, and I know that. And they treat people rotten, and they're selfish, and they get to be in relationships. So can I really be that bad? Like my baseline? But then, you know, I see people who would rather spend their time with people who act malicious and manipulative and selfish and horrible, you know, and that's preferred to me. So maybe that's completely right. Maybe my baseline really is much lower than anyone else in the world. But that seems illogical. And that's the thing, is that normally I would just, okay, yeah, that's how it is. But this 5-year plan, or whatever, 5-year cycle, comes around, and I start thinking, God, no, that's just not right. That's not right. There are much more horrible people than me. You know, if you took all the people in the world and lined them up by how awful they treat other people, it's hard to say, but I don't think I would be in the bottom 50%. Yeah, I'm wrong. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Again, I don't know. That won't track with me. The feeling like I would ruin people also gets kind of diminished. This time it just fades. I actually had somebody told me that was ridiculous, because what did I think? I was going to make other people avoidant? I mean, I know that's not possible, so what? Why would I think that? I don't know what I do. Anyway, so the point of this video is, it's possible that I'm going into one of these new cycles, and that's what people ask about all the time. How to get through past the avoidance in order to connect with people. And if that happens to me, maybe I'll make videos and